a este encuentro, webinar, en que vamos a compartir un poco el camino que ha llevado los religiosos y las religiosas de América Latina y Caribe para presentar, para escribir este texto. Va a ser un webinar no solamente de palabras, va a ser también un momento de contemplación, de escucha de nosotras mismas, para también ver qué tipo de ecos esto nos procura a nosotras. Con mucho gusto voy a presentar a la hermana María Luisa Berzosa, que nos va a facilitar este encuentro. Es una hija de Jesús y en este momento se encuentra en Roma por ser consultora en la Secretaría del Sínodo. Bienvenida María Luisa y gracias por aceptar la invitación a facilitar, a moderar este encuentro. Creo que muchas te conocen. ¿Tu micro está apagado? Ahora.
Muchas gracias, Patricia. Un saludo a todas y a todas. Buenas tardes desde Roma, buenos días para América. Encantada de estar ayudando en esta presentación.
Bueno, te voy a dejar la palabra después. Ahora tomamos un momento, empezamos este encuentro con un momento de oración y hemos pedido a Mayra Cuellar, una hermana de la Congregación de las Bienaventuranzas, que se encuentra ella también en Roma, en particular en la oficina de la UISC, donde trabaja en la oficina del proyecto Talita Cum, contra la trata de personas, contra el tráfico humano. Gracias, Mayra, y a ti para la oración.
Gracias, Patricia. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Buenos días. En el Evangelio de hoy Jesús nos dice que su reino está en medio de nosotros. Él está con nosotros. Y hoy le pedimos por esta iglesia que camina, para que acrezca en nosotros la conciencia de querer convertirnos en una iglesia sinodal, escuchando las voces de nuestras hermanas y hermanos, y especialmente de nuestros hermanos más pobres. Dejémonos tocar por las palabras de Jesús que inspiran el horizonte. Con miedo, aunque también con alegría, las mujeres partieron rápido del sepulcro y corrieron a dar el anuncio a los discípulos. En eso, Jesús les salió al encuentro y las saludó. Ellas se acercaron, se abrazaron a sus pies y se postraron ante él. Entonces él les dijo: no teman, vayan y anuncien a mis hermanos que vayan a Galilea y que allí me verán. Ellas, constantes y perseverantes, reciben consuelo, una enseñanza y una misión. Ellas, las mujeres del alba, fuertes, íntegras, memoriosas y sabias, son enviadas como apóstoles de la buena nueva de la resurrección. Ellas son las primeras que reciben el saludo de la nueva vida. No tengan miedo. Ellas y toda la comunidad de discípulas y discípulos de entonces y de todos los tiempos recibirán el don del Espíritu, de la Ruá divina, que renueva todo cuanto existe. A la luz de estas palabras, pidamos a Dios que caminemos juntos, como mujeres y hombres del alba que viven la vida del resucitado y la anuncian con la propia vida, a cada hombre y mujer, en todo tiempo y en todos los espacios. Amén.
You have the floor, María Luisa. It's a source of joy to participate in this webinar. It's a double joy to be able to present this to our brothers and sisters. It's a joy because this beautiful work of Clara is going through borders. It's transcending our private lives, but this joy of sharing, of receiving everything we are doing in the world. It is my honor to introduce Inés Beslevin, a religious, a slave of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, born in Buenos Aires. She spent many years in formation as a novice, postulant, and juniors director in Argentina. She was also a formator at the last stage when the sisters go profess their final vows. She's currently a provincial of the Slaves of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in Argentina and Uruguay. She is the president of CONFAR, the Conference of Religious of Argentina, and vice president of CLAR. Thank you so much, Inés, and welcome. Once I present Jose Luis, we look forward to listening to you. Jose Luis Ayala, affectionately called Pepe. He was born in Querétaro, in Mexico. He is a missionary of the Holy Spirit since 1987. He says he's going to turn 33 as a missionary and 24 years as a priest. He directs the basic formation in Mexico, Guadalajara, and then he spent 2 years in Spain, in Zaragoza, working at a parish. Then he moved to Madrid to the parish of Guadalupe, where he spent a few years accompanying youth ministry. And we know the parish of Guadalupe and that community. He then became part of an insurgent community in Tilapa, Guerrero, as he accompanied pastoral and social processes with indigenous people. And he got in touch with the Indian theology, accompanying workshops, Bible courses, because he studied sacred scriptures in Spain. He's still part of the formation team of his province. Then he was part of the general government as a vicar, and last year in 2021, his brothers elected him as a general animator of the congregation for the 6-year term that began in 2021 until 2027. In September 2021, he was also appointed in May of 2022, he was appointed as vice president of CLAR. So we have Inés and Pepe as president and vice president of CLAR. As I said, we are looking forward to listening to you, to listen to this daring of hope at dawn. And we hope that our entire religious life, our world communities, our people can be that, an announcement of dawn, an enlightening and hopeful announcement. Thank you for your presence and your sharing. We have the ears of our face and the eyes of our heart that look forward to listening to your words. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria Luisa, for these words as you introduced us. We're going to now begin our presentation. Good morning and good afternoon, and we invite you to share this space of sorofraternal encounter so that, moved by the divine Ruah, we may enter the inspiring horizon of CLAR, and accompanied by the women of the dawn, we may move forward in daring hope at dawn. We invite you to have with you a paper and pen to take some notes, a small candle, a small plant if you have one nearby, a sign of your consecration.
Pepe está silenciado.
This one is muted. Good morning also, sisters and brothers. It is also a pleasure to share this moment of encounter and prayer around this horizon. The first thing we invite you to is to stop one moment to ask ourselves, in the depth of our heart as we close our eyes, what the dawn refers us to. We take a moment internally to listen to ourselves.
Usalva nos remite a renacer.
The dawn refers us to be reborn, to be recreated, to return to life consciously and newly, to be able to name things as if they were anew. From its Hebrew roots, Zara, dawn, invites us to stand up, to shine, to manifest ourselves. The horizon invites us to enter a new world, a new possibility. From there, let us get into this process and this possibility that we are given by this icon. The process of the horizon enters that consciousness of knowing that we are a people of God on a journey, recognizing ourselves not as an unmovable reality that is finished, rather a religious life that with the breath of the divine ruah of the spirit and in openness to the signs of the times and places is being transformed to become credible and coherent, significant and evangelical. In this way, in these 63 years of journey as a clad, we've been undertaking stages of maturation and growth to recreate ourselves also in the light of dawn, in close connection with the joys and hopes, the sorrows, the anxieties of our people and our Latin American and Caribbean church. Stages that we could describe, as Father Carlos Parmesa says, as stages of childhood, birth, since its birth until Medellin, with a great thrust to be able to generate our own identity at the service of the church, the world, and reality. But it is also a stage of youth and public life to situate ourselves in embodying an option, a determined option for the poor, but it's also a stage of passion, of difficulties, of re-understanding ourselves, also from the cross on these paths between Santo Domingo and Puebla. And also it's the experience of resurrection that we have and that we've had since then, as we are still driven by the strength of the resurrected one to build a religious life at the service of our people and the church. Something that is very important is the reflexive process on the journey of CLAR. At the end of the last century, there were processes of listening and discernment that were brewing and that helped us guide our steps as a Latin American and Caribbean religious life. Toward the end of the last century, we experienced the importance of embracing the change of epoch. And then at the turn of the century and accompanied by the uh, journey of Emmaus, we entered a deep listening to move forward as we climbed toward the mystical and prophetic life that is at the service of life. These first 10 years that accompanied this millennium in CLAR opened some spaces so that as we were accompanied by the Syrophoenician women in the Transfiguration, we could approach and understand the new scenarios and emerging subjects. Subsequently, in the icon of Bethany, in this family of brothers and sisters following Jesus, we listened to God where life cries out to go toward this life that is crying out in our contexts. Subsequently, the icon of the visitation to go out in a haste to meet life moved us to turn our consecrated life into an approach to the existential and geographic peripheries in our continent. And before this icon of the women of the dawn, we felt driven to live with Mary, with the faithful community, to live in Cana, to understand that it's time, it is time for a new wine and a new religious life. This journey of 63 years with Horizons has placed us in the midst of the possibility to build ourselves as a consecrated life at the service of people. In the midst of this exceptional time that we have experienced as a humanity, as we are in the post-pandemic era, driven by the Spirit, we have entered a synodal process of discernment and participation to carry out our 21st General Assembly, a process that was made up of a virtual pre-assembly process that we celebrated in 2021 in August, and also a new stage of online regional meetings, and ultimately an elective assembly that was held in Medellin in Colombia from June 1st to the 4th of this year. From these sorofraternal meetings as a religious life of the continent, we entered a new 3-year period, and we welcomed as a gift of God, as a desire of the Spirit, the icon and the inspiring horizon in our current pilgrimage, which is what we are presenting, the Women of the Dawn. Here we have our icon, the icon of this horizon. Firstly, I'd like to clarify that this is not an icon that is privative of women, just as the disciples of Emmaus being men, and it inspires men and women indistinctly. The same thing is done by the Women of the Dawn. In the context of a synodal church that is opening to more evangelical transformation, the prophetic value of religious life consists in awakening the world from the feminine logic represented in the Women of the Dawn. The expression Women of the Dawn is not coined by CLAR. It is the way in which the biblical scholars refer to the text of Matthew 28. Let us attentively look at the icon. we see three women walking decisively towards the dawn. They're looking at the light and they know how to wait, clinging to the promise. Around them, there is a contrast of light and deep darkness. There are realities that do not emerge, that do not dawn. Now let us look at the women's cloaks. They are displaying realities of pain. They are the ones who had the audacity to be present, to be involved with the tombs of the world, the tombs of those discarded, of those of the dispossessed of the earth, those who have no possibilities, the grave of the victims of violence, of exploitation and abuse, the tomb of the wounded Mother Earth. Let us look at the movement of the light, the path of the light. They are in a state of mission. They move ahead of the light of dawn, embarking on a journey, placing their heart on Jesus, opening holes in the spirit so he can enter and make everything fruitful. They are affected by the light of dawn. They are witnesses of that light. They transmit that light and hopes towards the reality of cross and pain.
Las mujeres y los varones consagrados
Consecrated women and men are called at the synodal time to awaken to this display of gifts and possibilities that arise when the stones that imprison life are removed, when the Spirit is allowed to dwell and to reform the church. Today, more than ever, we are convinced that true reform comes from the encounter with Jesus, to the echo of his word, learning from his heart and assimilating his style. This is well known to the women of the dawn, those who knew how to transform their own existence in the encounter with Jesus. It is time to remember and to pay homage to the men and women who at each dawn and in each of our peoples set out on their way, and at the door of each tomb they are witnesses of life, light, and the resurrection.
Las mujeres fueron insustituibles en el alma del
Women were irreplaceable at the dawn of Christianity as they are now. The church has a woman's face. It is woven mostly in the womb of women. It is increasingly evident that there is need to listen to women in the church, to value the extraordinary richness and their ecclesial way of being, to interweave their gifts, those gifts that generate bonds, synergy, and resilience. There is no ambition for power or feeling of inferiority, but the desire for greater participation and co-responsibility in the discernment and decision-making of the consecrated woman in the church, who responds to the common dignity of given to all by baptism. We are all called to be wombs. The feminine church has the strength of fruitfulness. In men, there is also daring, care, tenderness, and embrace.
Abramos espacio al espíritu.
Let us make room for the Spirit to encourage the religious life to give life, so that we may be placed in the place of daring hope at dawn.
Los movimientos del alba,
The movements of dawn,
nuestros sueños y anhelos
our dreams and desires
nacen de la constatación
come from the realization that reality is not closed nor finished,
sino que están abiertos
rather open
en la fantasía del espíritu.
to the fact that in the fantasy of the Spirit, we should continue to build it in the common surrender.
De nuestras pisadas
Each of our footsteps opens furrows and paths
dan paso a
that
paso la
give us step by step the novelty that brings the dawn,
Por ello,
that is brought by dawn.
de las mujeres del alba
Therefore, the memory of the women of dawn is an impulse towards life. Let us then let these moments of dawn and courage are present,
teniendo la certeza
having the certainty that we are rooted
en el amor,
in the love of God,
teniendo fe
having faith in the future.
primer movimiento
So
hacia
first movement towards life in hope.
la memoria bíblica de
The biblical memory of
cantar del alba
women at dawn
muestra un camino
shows us a way to be witnesses of hope in the heart of the world, in the heart of our communities, and the heart of so many daily stories of suffering and pain.
a través de su osada
Through their daring freedom, the women of dawn
un hondo
take us into a deep journey of hope that points to life,
esa que
that
siempre
which
encuentra
always finds
para romper
holes to break the night.
en este primer movimiento
In this first movement, the divine Ruah pushes us to an awakening to life from a deep and disturbing hope.
acercarnos a las mujeres del
To approach the women of the dawn is to immerse ourselves in a deep contemplation and a challenging spiritual journey towards life,
para movernos hacia una esperanza
to move towards a resilient hope capable of not fleeing and remaining without fears paralyzing us, having the certainty that love is not an infertile suffering.
para movernos también hacia una
To also move us towards a hope that welcomes in the mystery of life the presence of the risen one who gives us name, who gives us joy, identity, and meaning,
y nos mueven
and to move us
esperanza testimonial
to go toward the testimonial hope
testigos
that comes forth
de restauración
to be witnesses and prophets of restoration, consolation, and restitution, giving birth to new possibilities for life to flourish.
así como las mujeres del alba
Thus,
pese a todo
like the women of dawn, in spite of everything and against all odds, we must be able to sail through the night until we find the flashes of the light of dawn.
es hora de acoger
It is time to welcome the power of the resurrection and sail the night,
desde la centralidad
so that from the centrality in Jesus,
renovado entusiasmo
in renewed enthusiasm and embracing the future, we may walk in hope and confidently hand in hand with our God. We now invite you to take your small candle,
que la podamos encender
to light it,
y que podamos reconocer
and to recognize in the depths of our life that the risen one has lit an inextinguishable fire to make us witnesses of hope. Take a few minutes and renew this call in the depth of your process as a consecrated man or woman in your sorofraternal spaces, in your closeness, in your service and commitment to the people of God, in your presence, in the commitment to creation and the more dignified life for all.
inextinguible del resucitado siga alentando nuestras almas.
El segundo movimiento es hacia lo esencial del seguimiento de Jesús y la
Second movement is towards the essential movement in Jesus and the centrality of the human reality. The icon of Matthew 28 is not about the empty tomb, but about the transformation of women from disciples to apostles. The women or women disciples return to the tomb to manifest their love for the Lord. The tomb is not an empty place, It will be the place of encounter with the risen one, a place of hope, of fruitfulness, of new sending. They cease to be part of the mass of spectator disciples to become apostles of apostles, embodying with courage a radical and universal following of the Lord in the Church of the Dawn.
El discipulado nace del encuentro.
Discipleship is born from the encounter with the person of Jesus, who gives a new horizon and a radical orientation to life. It is not an intellectual exercise or moral choice. The call involves the entire personal, relational, and functional life in the exercise of its discipleship. In the fulfillment of the mission, the disciples meet the risen one. Remaining locked in the fears or in one's own securities leads to death. Only taking the risk of proclamation leads to the encounter with the one who transforms death into life and heartbreak into sorrow fraternity. The women ran to give the angel's announcement. Jesus came to meet them and told them, "Do not be afraid, go and announce my brothers." He still considers them as brothers despite their abandonment. Jesus sends them as apostles to the first community of apostles.
Por eso es hora de acoger la fuerza de la
That
resurrección.
is why it is time to welcome the power of the resurrection and foster a relational and vocational culture that humanizes. Let us look at a sign that reminds us of our story of consecration. It can be the ring, the cross. You may close your eyes. I shall place myself in my experience of discipleship alongside the women of the dawn.
Admiro a las mujeres por su osadía.
I look and admire the women because of their audacity, their daring. From the heart, I feel that I am sharing with them.
Dejo que me alcance la luz del alba.
I let the light of dawn reach me. I situate myself in the transforming encounter with the risen one.
Pido superar el miedo interno.
I ask to overcome the inner fear of the radicality of the gospel. I open myself to what is new.
Escucho mi envío como apóstol.
I listen to my sending as an apostle to care for life to humanize it with community relationships that heal, recreate, enrich, and exercise a vocational attraction for their testimony. Let us go back to the gospel that is capable of healing and resignifying our humanity. Let us do it urgently, with no haste, but with no hesitation, as the women of the dawn did when they dared to sail the night, when they dared to be witnesses of the risen one.
El tercer movimiento
The third movement
avanzar
moves us to
hacia la dignidad
go forth
y la
toward
cultura del cuidado.
dignity and the culture of
Este tercer
care.
movimiento
In this third
nos
movement,
invita a poner una
we
especial
are
atención
invited to pay special
al mal de
attention to the
educación
care.
moral,
Today, more than ever,
cuidado
there's an
en todas
urgent
las
need for
dimensiones
an ethic of
de
care
nuestra vida humana.
that permeates all dimensions of our human life, embracing all spheres, religious, rational,
Deseo y el de la responsabilidad.
desire, and responsibility.
Ante los abusos sexuales
In the face of sexual power and conscience abuse, as a church and communities, we are shaken.
esta situación
This
nos
situation
exige
requires us to enter into a deep process of conversion and reform.
como discípulas y discípulos.
As disciples, the encounter with the risen one opens us to a new way of understanding and proceeding in our lives, where care and protection becomes the central axis and a demand that has no turning back. Like the women of the dawn, we have to walk towards a new culture born in the light of Easter, the culture of care. As says our sister Rosaura Gonzalez, caring is a feminine verb. It is slow, caressing, that contrasts our haste and our anxiety for immediate results. It gives a warmth to our community relationships. It breaks down our defenses and makes us invent gestures of tenderness and compassion. This commitment is revolutionary and asks us for a profound conversion to a new way of being and understanding life and relationships, where we take up the moral responsibility to care and respect the dignity of every person, but particularly that of the most fragile and defenseless of our world, of our society, that is the boys and girls, the children, adolescents, and vulnerable adults. It is time to welcome the power of the resurrection and listen to the groans of the victims, to generate relationships that promote the culture of encounter, care, and good treatment, to highlight the dynamics of abuse that make it impossible to live the relational style of Jesus. I invite you to close your eyes and at first remember in your deep memory some gestures of tenderness and protection that you experienced in your story or history.
También reconoce lo profundo
Also,
de tu vida, lo
recognize
compasión
deep down in your life the gifts of tenderness and compassion with which the divine Ruah has gifted you to care and protect those around you,
especialmente hacia
especially
las hermanas
the vulnerable brothers and sisters.
Trae a tu memoria
Remember and recall some episode in which you were an apostle of tenderness and care.
Termina este momento orante haciendo un gesto de
And
cariño,
this praying moment, making a gesture of caress to yourself.
gesto
May it be a gesture
está para contigo,
in the way God is with you
compromiso para vivir
and
nuestra relacionalidad humana,
a commitment to live
recordando que hemos
our
sido
human
amados, cuidados,
relationship,
y que cuando
remembering
amamos, cuidamos.
that we were loved and cared for. And when we love, we care. And when we care, we love.
El cuarto movimiento del
The
espíritu
fourth movement of the spirit is toward the possibility of being a sign, a word,
creíble,
and a credible metaphor.
que es caminar
That is
hacia la interacción
walking
y el encuentro
towards
de
the
carismas.
interaction and the meeting of
Hoy,
charisms.
proceso de transformación
Today,
eclesial
there's a process of
modelo
ecclesial
seguro de
transformation
iglesia
in
que
light
puebla
of
la
a
alianza y el
model
camino,
of a church that is
que
people
será
of God on a journey
participativo y corresponsable.
that is participatory and co-responsible.
El hoy de la historia
The today of
exige una
history
vida religiosa
demands a
capaz de
religious life
arriesgarse
that is capable of
en la
taking
travesía
risks
de
in the
dejarse
journey
de
of
roles individuales
ceasing
y
to be
institucionales,
individual and institutional
para
reference
ser
points,
referentes
to
del
be
reino
references of
con la
the
comunión.
kingdom through communion.
El relato místico profético y de comunión
The
de la
mystical,
vida religiosa
prophetic, and communion story of religious life
surgir de la
today is
vulnerabilidad
expressed from
y es en
vulnerability,
ella
and it is
se
in
encarna
that
la vida
that the
más
life
simple y
is
perfeccionada.
incarnated that only exists as it is interrelated. It is a time to travel together into deeper waters of evangelical smallness, to awaken and sustain the prophetic hope from the little, the small, the poor and insignificant.
La significatividad y simbolismo creíble de la vida
The significance and credible symbolism of religious life can only be given through what is interrelated or in communion, the collective generativity that transcends geographies, statistics, and individual economies, arriving through dialogue and discernment to join actions with transforming impact on reality.
La mística de lo inter se convierte
The mysticism of the inter thus becomes a place of unveiling. People in relationships that are integrated and integrating, who strive to reflect the Trinitarian communion in communion with the laity in interinstitutional affinity, promoting and diversifying new leaderships, ministries, and services, expressing with missionary and itinerant networks the radical option of serving in existential frontiers where one fights for life. That is why it is a time to welcome the power of resurrection and serve in itinerancy, intercongregationality, and interculturality until the transformation takes place. I now invite you to do a gesture with your hands. I'm going to place my hands in a gesture of consecration to the Lord, to receive all from Him and offer everything.
Me centro en una mano
I focus on one hand
y me represento en una parte de ella.
and I represent myself in a part of it.
Doy gracias por ser con otros mano.
I give thanks for being a hand with others.
Descubro y siento
I discover and feel those who most form my hand. Who am I united to? With whom am I integrated? And with whom we enhance life?
Voy a entrelazar mis manos
I clasp my hands
y percibo la experiencia
and I perceive
de comunión
an
interinstitucional
experience of interinstitutional communion
intercongregacionalidad.
as well as intercongregationality.
Recibo la mística del
I
inter
receive the
como lugar de revelación
mysticism
de
of
Dios.
inter as the place of
Me
God's
dispongo a la
revelation. I prepare myself to the inter until the transformation happens. I welcome the inter as I prepare for it.
Y desde esta disposición nos abrimos al
And
siguiente
from this movement, we open up to the following movement, the movement towards synodality.
Este movimiento nos empuja
This
a
movement
experimentar de manera
pushes us to
cada vez más intensa
experience in an ever more intense manner the need and beauty of walking together,
ya que la sinodalidad como dimensión constitutiva de la Iglesia
since synodality as a constitutive dimension of the church favors dialogue, participation, encounter, and co-responsibility. It can articulate all processes and spaces and structures of our sailing together,
remar con otras.
rowing with others.
Es un movimiento que
It
nace
is
en la
a
misma esencia de lo
movement
humano,
that emerges in the essence of what is human and of the entire creation. Our God has left his relational imprint in everything and everyone. His presence lives and interacts with us and with each other.
por ello,
That is why,
desde el alba,
like the women of the dawn, rowing in the same boat implies stopping, coming together and being together to celebrate the presence of the risen one and discerning the breath of the Spirit in order to proclaim the gospel and achieve the project of the kingdom.
en definitiva,
In short,
se trata de soñar
it is a matter of dreaming together with so many sisters and brothers that another church is possible.
Por ello es hora de acoger la fuerza de la
That is
resurrección.
why it is time to welcome the power of resurrection and row with others, contributing to the reform of the church.
Las acojo en este movimiento de remar juntos.
While I welcome in prayer this movement to row together, I invite you to take a piece of paper and place on it, write on it, the names of those with whom currently in your life and in vision you are summoned to row together. You are summoned by the risen one to make this synodal journey of participation in your searches, processes, and decision making. I invite you to write the names of those with whom you are called to row together at this time on this piece of paper.
Sabiendo que quizá haya muchos nombres,
Knowing that perhaps the names are many, as a symbol, I invite you to to make with this paper a small paper boat as a sign of that invitation to row together on the same boat. So we take a moment to take this name filled with names and to make a boat with it in order to sail together with the church, with the people of God, and with each other to walk together on this path of synodality.
pues así con nuestros pequeños
So with our
barquitos, salgamos a hacer
small boats, let's go out and keep rowing into deep sea.
mueva, seguir caminando y
This voice of the risen one may move us and push us to keep rowing together with others.
El espíritu nos sigue moviendo.
The Spirit still moves us, and
Lo hace hacia
this
la utopía
sixth
del reino.
movement is done toward the utopia of the kingdom, a world of sisters and brothers.
Contemplamos el modo de
We
ser,
contemplate
estar y hacer
the
profético
way
de las
of
mujeres del alma.
being and of being prophetic of the women of the
María
dawn.
buscaba
Mary was looking for the body of her master.
El resucitado
The risen
le
one
invita a
invites her
encontrarlo
to not
y le
hold him
revela
back
dónde encontrar su
and
cuerpo.
reveals to her where
Ve
she might
a tus
find his
hermanas y
body.
hermanos.
Go to my brothers and sisters.
Es la primera vez que utiliza la
It is
expresión
the first time that he
hermanas y
uses
hermanos,
the expression brothers and sisters,
resaltando la sorofraternidad.
highlighting the sort of fraternity in this sending.
Serán María y las demás mujeres, las mujeres del
It will
alma del
be
cristianismo,
Mary and the other women, the women of the dawn of Christianity, always and in
testigos
everything.
de
They will
sorofraternidad
be witnesses
en
of
la
sorrow
primera comunidad
fraternity
cristiana.
in the first Christian community.
Ser religiosa, religioso
Being a
en el
religious
siglo de hoy
in today's world
se constituye en un ejercicio continuo
represents
en
a
la búsqueda de
continuous
transformarse
exercise in the
en
search
sembradoras,
to
sembradores
become
de sorofraternidad
sowers of
universal.
universal
La
brotherhood,
única medicina capaz
the
de curar
only
las heridas de
medicine
la
that is
humanidad.
capable of healing the wounds of
Es
humanity.
testimonio de amor y
It
alegría
is a
de quien descubre la
testimony
belleza
of
de
love
vivir
and joy of
no
those who
para sí,
discover the
sino
beauty
para
of
los
living
otros
not
y
for
otras
themselves but for others,
y abiertos al
open
totalmente otro.
to the totally
Así es.
other that is God.
Ahondar en modos relacionales desde la
Delve
perspectiva del Evangelio
into relational modes from the
desarmar prácticas
perspective of the
existenciales
gospel and unlearn
alejadas del querer de
ecclesial
Dios
practices that are far from God's will
para lograr
in order
relaciones
to
circulares,
achieve
inclusivas y
circular,
liberadoras,
inclusive,
solo
and
fraternas,
liberating and sort of fraternal
que respetan el
relationships
papel
that value
protagónico de la
and
mujer y de los
respect
laicos
the leading role of women and the
erradicando
laity,
todo servilismo
eradicating all
clericalismo
servility and
y todas formas de
clericalism and all
violencia.
forms of violence.
Es hora de acoger la fuerza de la resurrección,
It is time to welcome the
formarnos
power
para
of
estar
resurrection
siempre y en
and
todo
form ourselves to
testigos
be
de
always and
sorofraternidad.
in everything a witness, a testimony of sorrow fraternity.
Al escuchar esta poesía,
As we
vamos a agradecer
listen
el
to
testimonio
this poem, we
de una mujer del alma
give
de mi vida.
thanks for the testimony of a woman of the dawn for my life.
Mientras escuchamos la
As
poesía,
we listen to
descubrimos
this
y
poem, we
actualizar podemos
discover
poner
it,
en el chat
and at the
el
end,
nombre de aquella
we
mujer del
can
alba en
put
nuestra vida.
the name of that woman of the dawn in our life.
Mujeres, hasta que salga lo
Women
mejor del otro.
love until the best of the other emerges.
Tu beso
Your kiss
sellando una promesa
seals
inquebrantable.
a promise that
Mi
cannot
medicina que sana
be
todas
ignored.
heridas,
Your caress, a medicine that heals all
destrozará,
wounds. Your
abriendo caminos de
footsteps
esperanza,
opening
senderos de
paths
vida
of
en
hope,
despoblado inhóspito.
paths of life
Tu
in
corazón
an
latiendo
inhospitable environment.
tardíamente
Your
y
heart
esperando
beats
lo
and
genuino humano,
welcomes the
lo
pace
verdaderamente
of what
humano.
is truly human.
Tú,
You
indeclinablemente presente y cercana,
that are incredibly
donde
close
urge el
and
canto amigo
nearby,
que
where
invita al
the
diálogo.
friendly song
Donde se
emerges
necesita
as
el
it
fuego nuevo
reduces fear,
que avive la
where
pasión,
there's a need for a new fire
donde
to
reclaman
rekindle
los
passion,
guardianes fieles y dependientes
wherever
que
we
custodien
cry
celosamente el
for
esperanza
faithful
y
guardians
defensores de
to
esos pequeños
carefully care
que
for
nunca
hope
brillan.
and defenders of the small ones that are
Amor que
never
acompaña
important.
toda
A
travesía
love that
auténtica,
accompanies
que
every
sostiene las
authentic
luchas
crossing
entre
that
sendero sin piedad,
is developed in nights and care until the best of the other emerges, whatever is most genuine, noble, and longed for. A presence that fills everything and leads to maturity in the generous offer, the Eucharistic offer of every day.
Y así nos movemos.
And so we move into the following movement of the women of the dawn toward the systemic change and political impact. This seven impulse moves us to walk forward within the synodal path and social transformation, which includes social and environmental justice. It is a call to go out and overcome self-reference and to commit as consecrated life to the sustainability of life, humanity, and the planet. And this can only happen from the conquest of equity as a relational foundation without anyone being excluded or invisible. As a society and as a church, we are becoming increasingly aware of the need for structural change within society. So with the strength of the Risen One and the guidance of the Divine Ruah, we are invited to move like the first apostles of new social references in the light of Easter. Let us undertake efforts and projects of systemic change that allow us to dream, seek, and recreate more just, healthy, and dignified social structures, starting from the bottom with the poor and in connection with others. It is therefore time to welcome the power of the resurrection so that within the synodal path, we may move forward in social transformation, not allowing anyone to be made invisible in society and in the church and in our communities.
A que, pudiendo acceder al chat,
We invite you to, by accessing the chat box, and based on the reality that you live, that you may recognize what social groups are made invisible, are excluded or discarded in our context. You have embraced courageously with that same courage of the women of the dawn. Embrace this call to make them visible. If you can get access to the chat box and use this link, you may write three realities that are made invisible that we need to display, and together we can write them down as a sign. Click on the Mentimeter and write the realities. Click on the link in the chat box, the Mentimeter, to write down the realities that are made invisible. There is a link in the chat box that will take you to the Mentimeter in order to write down the reality that has been made invisible.
El octavo movimiento
The eighth movement is towards the responsible care for the environment and the rights of future generations.
se ha puesto en evidencia la
We have highlighted the fragility of the planet. Never before had the whole world faced the possibility of the extinction of the human species as we had with the COVID pandemic. In this eighth movement, we allow ourselves to reflect on our common future, animated by the creative spirit. Only the spirit makes us walk as a body, and the awareness, coherence, and practical impact for the care of the common home. We can all collaborate as instruments of God for the care of creation, each one from our own culture, experience, initiatives, and capabilities. All the projects force us to contemplate the needs of our environment and to get involved in the search for the common good, starting from the transformation of those who are close, in listening to those who are most impoverished, and Sister Mother Earth, in order to recover the conditions of a dignified and sustainable existence for all. How can we live this movement toward a responsible care for the environment? It is time to welcome the power of the resurrection for a renewed option for integral ecology from the awareness of the sacredness of creation. The perfume in the gospel is a sign of care that the women of the dawn wanted to give to the body of Jesus, and that Jesus transfers to his sisters and brothers. Do not hold on to me, go to my brothers and sisters. I feel invited to give myself, to squander my perfume, to promote ecological conversion as a dynamic that privileges human dignity, that cares for the sacredness of creation, and interrelates everything in a search for the common good. To be a presence at the service of life, committed to the care of our common home and the defense of those most vulnerable in society. I take the perfume into my hands, the perfume of my life, and I ask myself, where does Jesus invite me to bring my perfume? To whom should I pour it on?
El Espíritu estuvo actuando sobre
The
nosotros,
Spirit acted
nos estuvo bañando de luz.
on us. It bathed us with light during this prayerful meeting that we have shared.
La luz de la aurora
The light of dawn
se hace cada vez más resplandeciente.
becomes increasingly shiny.
Vamos a recordar los distintos momentos
Let us recall the different
antes de entrar a la
moments
restauración,
that we had
momentos que nos movieron más,
throughout this prayer,
preguntándonos
the
cómo
moments
se
that
enriqueció
moved us more, asking ourselves,
mi experiencia
how
de
was
alma,
my experience of dawn enriched?
recogiendo los sentimientos
As we
que habitan
gather the
en mi
feelings
corazón,
that inhabit my heart,
a que me mueven.
what am I moved to?
Puedo dejar un eco
I can
de lo vivido en el
leave
chat.
an echo of what I experienced in the chat box.
María,
Maestro,
nos decidimos a salir en plena madrugada, haciendo frente al viento en contra, al frío y al miedo en la oscuridad.
a paso firme juntas y juntos nos damos ánimo para llegar.
Nuestras pupilas se han dilatado
Los corazones se aceleraron
y vemos cómo la esperanza esperanza despunta ya. Con ternura y coraje, con las mujeres del alba, buscamos a nuestro Señor, a Jesús que salva. Con ternura y coraje, con las mujeres del alba, buscamos a nuestro Señor, a Jesús que salva.
Tenemos fresca en nuestra memoria tu palabra viva. Tu cruz nos desvela y nos desafía. Tu amor nos hace permanecer.
Hasta el lugar de la herida vamos, nos mueve el dolor de nuestros hermanos.
En nuestros pies va la profecía
De 1000 testigos que son semilla, y vemos como la esperanza despunta ya. Con ternura y coraje, con las mujeres del alba, buscamos a nuestro Señor, a Jesús que salva. Con ternura y coraje, con las mujeres del alba, buscamos a nuestro Señor, a Jesús que salva.
Somos la iglesia que humilde se estrena escuchando las voces de los que siempre quedaron al borde de los gemidos de la creación. En este encuentro nos sale, Señor, tan hermosa sorpresa.
Nuestras pupilas se han dilatado,
Los corazones se aceleraron
y vemos como la esperanza despunta ya. Con ternura y coraje, con las mujeres del alba, buscamos a nuestro Señor, a Jesús que salva. Con ternura y coraje, con las mujeres del alba, buscamos a nuestro Señor, a Jesús que salva. Con ternura y coraje, con las mujeres del alba, buscamos a nuestro Señor, a Jesús que salva. Con ternura y coraje, con las mujeres del alba, buscamos a nuestro Señor, a Jesús que salva.
El micrófono, María Luisa.
Muchísimas gracias. Estamos poniendo
Thank you so much.
los sentimientos en el chat, pero
We are writing our feelings in the chat box, but I think that we are kind of speechless about this experience that we lived with so much intensity, tenderness, and hope. With tenderness and courage, with drive and thrust, we are thankful for our vocation, for our sending. I think it was a gift that we are going to take into our hearts to keep enjoying it and sharing it. They're already asking whether it's been recorded so as to share it. We cannot stay at this. Thank you so much. If you want to write something else, we are a little beyond our schedule, but perhaps a few more words. We say goodbye, especially thanking Inés, Pepe, the entire Clara, and all the women of Dawn who meet in this manner with much union of hearts, and this is what is most beautiful. Thank you, Maria Luisa, to you as well. Thank you to all those who participated. It was truly a mystical moment, very deep, and that we can repeat and listen to again. It'll be ready in a few days, perhaps next week, we can re-enjoy it in the 4 languages. We can enjoy it again beyond the actual document. So a virtual hug to Ines and Pepe and Ana Plus. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. And thank you for all those who joined in this presentation, because we're all allowing ourselves to be moved by the Spirit at this very special time in the church that allows us and calls us to transform ourselves. Religious life is stepping in and can say a lot in this movement, in this change. So thank you all for joining in and for letting ourselves be affected and moved by the Spirit, and we stay united. Thank you, and a big hug.